Charlie's fantastic. Charlie has always been fantastic. I'm so happy that he's Matt Murdock in Daredevil. He understands the character so extremely well. Hey everyone, welcome back to Candid Cinema. I'm Amanda, otherwise known as AMX NDA Reviews on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd, and you can check out my Instagram as well down below. Today I will be reviewing Daredevil Born Again episodes 1 and 2. I just want to give a huge shout out to Disney for allowing me to watch a couple of episodes. I love Daredevil. I watched the Netflix original series. Obviously, I think that was a shock to our core as Marvel fans because of how phenomenal it was, how detailed the action was, how perfect it was for Daredevil. I'm always a stickler for that kind of thing with these superheroes and how accurate they present them on screen. It's basically showing their skill set. I think that's part of what makes Daredevil so incredible is that, of course, you still have like these amazing action sequences, but there's so much heart here. And because of Matt Murdock's faith and how he does pray to God, and we see that a couple of times this season, it's very morally gray what he has to encounter this season, and things are pretty bleak as I go into this first episode. But Matt Murdock as a character is so complex, and there's such a fine balance between, you know, the dark and the light, which we also discuss in this season as well. So I think that out of the opening here, it does take a bit to find its footing. You can kind of tell that they're starting from scratch, but there's still so much. It feels so heavy from the original Netflix series that's being piled on here as well. We have a black screen to start out this first episode, and then the aspect ratio changes to reveal this building, and we see them walking out of Nelson and Murdock and Paige. We have Karen, Foggy, and Matt going to a bar, going to Josie's place where they constantly go to, and it was really great to see Karen and Matt again. They still have incredible chemistry. It's crazy. Foggy's talking to another lawyer named Kristen. Her last name's McDuffie, and they're talking about this upcoming trial, and he's very excited for it, Foggy. It was good to see Foggy back, just being his old self, and the banter between Matt and all of that. We get a familiar cue where Matt is listening, and there's like this hyper focus that we see, and that the screen goes blurry, and I think it's very effective, and it makes an impact. So the second they walk out of this bar, something bad happens. And with the way that people have been talking, I didn't think this was going to happen, but I know it's in the comics. And spoiler alert, this is a spoiler video, Foggy dies at the hands of Bullseye. So we see Matt's first run. It looks really cool, very comic booky, jumping like through the rooftops with his suit on. He wastes no time. Really cool stuff. A lot of slow-mo was used. There's still some issues for me personally, minor stuff with like the color grading, and at night they don't know how to really like light the darkness because you can't see the action scenes. There is a little hallway staircase fight scene, which was really cool with the flashing lights and with all the knives being thrown around and the knives sticking out of Matt, and I thought that was really cool. So the fight choreography is still carried over from the original series. I want to say that there isn't so much of fight choreography, but when there is like sprinkled throughout this season, it hits. So then we start seeing Daredevil swinging from the rooftops, and I was like, oh my god, his music, his score is fantastic. You know that like he's coming, he's around the corner, or he's, you know, he's doing a superhero thing, and I really like that. And he has Bullseye in the palm of his hand, so this is where the layering was phenomenal. So you have Karen on the ground with Foggy, and Matt is on the rooftop with Bullseye. He has him like clutched. Like he beat him to a pulp, but he's literally about to kill him. But because of the hyper focus with the sound design has to be incredible here. The sound design is not incredible here, then like what are we doing? There's no point in doing the show. So what happens is that he can hear Foggy's heartbeat. He can hear Karen. Okay. And the layers insane. And in that moment, when Foggy's heartbeat stops, Daredevil throws Bullseye off the roof of that thing. and purposely wanting to kill him. And then he lets out this massive scream because Foggy's dead. Charlie's fantastic. Charlie has always been fantastic. I'm so happy that he's Matt Murdock in Daredevil. He understands the character so extremely well. So Matt also has like his right hand. His name is Jerry in this, and he's the one that knows, alter ego. He also does a lot of like investigation for Daredevil, like on street level. So they've been together for a while. And I kind of like that pairing that we have someone else there too. So this is where I kind of like wigged out because I absolutely love the opening sequence of Daredevil, like the original series. It's absolutely gorgeous. The opening titles are gorgeous. So I was waiting. Are they going to do something similar? Are they going to just completely copy it? Like, what are we doing here? Listen, they did a perfect mix here. So when Jerry's talking to Daredevil, he says, you just couldn't deal with the pain. So he throws his mask off the roof. Slow-mo, so perfect. And then it goes into the title sequence. I love this title sequence. It matches the original so well. Everything's in stone. Everything's cracking. You see the Page, Nelson, and Murdoch completely shattered. You see the city completely shattered. Everything's falling apart. It's all in stone. And then you see that the stone is moving towards this figure. And then Daredevil comes up. And obviously, Daredevil, Born Again, title card. Boom. Love it. Every time it's on, every time it comes, I do not miss that intro because I loved it. I thought it's very fitting. It works twofold here considering what Matt has to go through, especially with the loss of Foggy. He doesn't deal with his grief. He's having a very hard time understanding why bad people are still around and are alive, like Bullseye, and why Foggy, who is just such a good person, is dead at the hands of what? We don't know, but we will find out when we watch the rest of the season. So after the opening sequence, Matt's prepping for Foggy's funeral, and it's just devastating. I didn't think I'd be like this impacted. To be honest, I was a bit teary-eyed watching that because it's Foggy. And if you are a diehard of the show, then even though many people think it's their first time interacting with them, so they don't understand why anyone would feel anything for Foggy Nelson. But for those who have watched it, it's like, what do you mean he's dead? What do you mean? Right after prepping to go to the funeral, there is a reverse camera shot on Kingpin. It's an upside down shot. And it rotates while he's at the table. And Kingpin's there. Vincent D'Onofrio's there. This man will go down in history as one of the best MCU villains, period. Fantastic. We all know that there's plenty of horror imagery, horrific images in the paintings in Kingpin's household. So what absolutely floored me, Kingpin was getting ready. He was going to a meeting with the families in the underground. I like calling it the criminal underground. That's pretty much what it is. And we see Vanessa. Do you know how eerie it is to hear him say Vanessa because of everything we know about like the history with Vanessa? And so there's a lot of like time jumps here. Long story short, what ends up happening is that Fisk wants to evolve. He had left for a little bit because of Echo, and then Vanessa was running the criminal underground by herself and had made some like weird choices. They were flourishing, but they made some weird choices. And now Fisk is back and he wants to work with Vanessa, but he wants to expand. He wants to change his persona. So the fine line here, the back and forth here, is that Fisk is out in the open as, who he is. So he doesn't think that like to wear a mask to hide yourself and your crimes and everything, people will still look at him and see one person transforming, instead of hiding behind another person, another mask, another version of yourself. That's the whole thing with Kingpin. He's like, this is who I am. Why do I have to hide myself? And then still he believes that he wants to transform and have the people kind of go through the transformation with him. But that's not how humans work. So a couple of months go by, as I say, there's a bit of a time jump. Bullseye goes to trial and Matt goes. He testifies. He gets Bullseye sentenced for life, which is amazing. Karen and Matt aren't really together anymore. Karen has to move away. Matt hasn't spoken to her. The friendship is completely at a standstill. Matt can't deal with his grief, and he's not Daredevil anymore, meaning there's no like head honcho vigilante in NYC. So that means that there's other vigilantes lurking the streets, trying to be good, trying to be good. So now, because Fisk wants to be a changed man, he runs for mayor of New York City. Very fitting. And then we have little Daniel, who I absolutely love because it is Michael Gandolfini. I loved watching him in this. He was fantastic. I think he really evolved as an actor from Many Saints of Newark. And I loved every second of him on screen. I thought he was great. I think him going toe to toe with Kingpin and also just being at his aid 24/7 and really believing in him. You see the difference of the generation. You do have BB Ulrich as one of Daniel's friends here. So BB Ulrich is played by Janaya Walton. I think she's great. She's a young journalist on the streets, and she's taking all these candid videos and reports and putting it up just to kind of see what people are talking about and how they feel about Fisk, how they feel about the city. They're complaining that the crime is all time high and that the cops aren't doing anything. So we see the corruption of the cops on the streets as well. No one's really trusting law enforcement. No one's really trusting the government either. All very realistic situations. So you see that she's trying to fight for the truth, where Daniel, on the other hand, is like, I want to fight for power. So you have that struggle between the two of them as well, and they have pretty great discussions throughout the season. Then we don't have Karen, so naturally, Matt has a new love interest, and her name is Heather Glenn, so it's Dr. Glenn. She is a therapist. That Kristen McDuffie, who is now, it's like McDuffie and Murdoch as the law firm, she kind of springs it on Matt and says, listen, please just go and see her and talk about what's bothering you, because she's pretty good. They're pretty good friends. There's a lot of like cute moments with Matt and with Heather, so I wasn't opposed to that. You get to see different sides of Matt in this as well, but he's still struggling to, to keep that other side of him. There's a lot of rage in him over Foggy. There's a lot of funny moments, not like MCU funny, like this is Daredevil funny. Some lines didn't hit, but there are some comedic moments where I'm like, okay, yeah, like this works. It works pretty well. So when Kingpin starts running for mayor, he has a campaign, Matt's like, I gotta go talk to you, buddy. They go to this diner, and it was really good. Very tense moment, probably my favorite scene in episode 1. I loved it. They start with like, it's been a long time. It's funny. It works. And then Kingpin mentions Echo. Matt retorts with, didn't she shoot you in the face? Like, it's just funny back and forth. Really good banter between the two of them. Kingpin says, tragedy changes you. He knows that Foggy died, and he questions why he stopped Daredevil. And that's interesting for Kingpin to ask him. And Matt's like, well, I felt like I was doing more bad than good. He caused more danger than doing actually something good. He believes in grace, and he believes in the ability to transform Kingpin. And that's why these two characters having such like these philosophical conversations, it's so important for their characters, more importantly for their relationship. The diner scene was great. It talks about, religion and faith and humanity. And then they do threaten each other to stay in their lane. So the whole thing of this is that Kingpin, as a mayor, doesn't want Daredevil to run around being a vigilante to make his job harder. Let's be realistic here. Or to take the spotlight from Kingpin. So he says, as long as you're not Daredevil, and everything will be fine. And then Matt's like, well, as long as you don't become a crime lord again, everything will be okay. So this is in the first episode. Do you really think they're going to stay like that? Absolutely not. No, and that's the fun part. That's what's so exciting, to place this conversation here towards the end of this. It's one of the best premieres that I've seen in a very long time. Kingpin gets elected. Vanessa does not care that he gets elected because she was so comfortable ruling the underground on her own that she doesn't really know what to do with Kingpin back in her, her domain. I wouldn't know either. It's really weird. After the election, he wants her approval so badly. Like his whole life is literally Vanessa. He'd do anything for her. So they're standing out on this rooftop, and she turns to him, she's like, well, well, don't kill him. Like, don't kill anyone at that point. Like stop yourself. And then in the interim, Matt's out with Heather. They came back from a little date. Everything's fine there. They hear that he gets elected. And now everything kind of changes in Matt's head. I lost my shit here because there was someone spray painting a mural. I didn't know if we were doing the Miles Morales tip, but the way that they've been talking about vigilantes and what happens in this season, it's a little breadcrumb. Like, it is so tiny, but I lost it. I was like, oh my God, you don't see who it is. And it was a mural of Kingpin, but it was spray painted. And I was like, is this Miles Morales? Is it Miles Morales? I don't know if it's him or not. I'm not 100% sure. So then we have Fisk on the rooftop looking down while Matt's in the crowd. And then we end with a red light on the left side of Matt's face, which is really cool. So that is how episode 1 ends. And I also love that it's like no bullshit between them. I love that they have a subtle history there. It's not like in your face that, guys, did you watch the show? Did you guys watch the original? Did you watch the original? This is Kingpin. This is Daredevil. Like, they're not dangling keys like they usually do. And so I appreciated that. And I just think that this is such like a refreshing take for the MCU. It's not refreshing for Daredevil because we know he's got the sauce. Like, Daredevil's always had the sauce. Like, it's one of the best series ever for any superhero television show. Like, it's fantastic. This just revives the MCU television for a little bit. So now I'm going to move on to episode 2. Episode 2 kind of opens up on Kingpin, which is great. And he's about to speak on television because he's elected. And he mentions, spider outfits and vigilantes. And then we hear the general consensus with the BB report, how they feel about him and Matt and like the vigilantes and all of that. So Fisk really wants to instill that these vigilantes aren't anything, to not look up to them. They're not heroes. Then right after it's within the same night, time-wise, there's a fight that breaks out in the subway, and someone goes to break up the fight, and he pushes someone into an oncoming train, which was insane. You don't expect that. There's a lot of things that you don't expect for a MCU television show to do, because if you look at all the MCU shows, they haven't really been that violent, and you don't expect certain things. They really did a good job in just letting Daredevil roam free. Like, you hear bone crunches, you just see so many bloody faces. Very graphic. If you're not okay with it, if you are, welcome. The funny thing is that Kingpin says, he's used to people hating him. So he has a secretary in office, and she's like, no, you have to get people to like you. What do you mean? Because right now they all hate you. We have to change the narrative. I've been working in this like mayoral office for like 15 years and like 4 different all this stuff. And he's like, I'm used to people hating me. It's not a big deal. So we won't change that. So she says, because, Vanessa's not in the picture, like, why don't you have a wife? Like, your kids and all of that. It's hurting the traditional voters, which is like the senior voters. And it's hurting that demographic who aren't really, they don't believe that Fisk can change and is a changed human because of everything that he did beforehand. Whereas the young ones are like all for it because they think that he's actually going to change. What happens now, we get an introduction to Hector Ayala. If you don't know who Hector Ayala is, episode 2 tells you that is the White Tiger, which was really cool. You don't really get to tap into the White Tiger. So I think his power set's awesome. We only got to see like a little bit of him, but Hector Ayala is here, and Matt goes to represent him because, unfortunately, Hector didn't know that it was an undercover cop, and now he is charged with killing a cop, but he didn't know that. So now we get to see the corrupt system at work in New York City, and we see that the cops are also conspiring against Hector Ayala because he is a vigilante at the same time. So what kind of unfolds here in episode 2 is really interesting. So with Hector Ayala and White Tiger, Matt wants to defend him because he can hear his heartbeat, and he says that, I didn't know they were cops. That's the angle that Matt takes to try to get him off. And that's perfectly fine, because how do you not disclose that information? They don't have badges. They're not going to know. While this conversation is happening now with this situation, it also impacts Fisk, because if Fisk loses the cops, he loses the city. So he wants to talk to the commissioner because so many cops are resigning under Fisk as mayor, which makes complete sense. He's like, I'm not going to, why would I work for someone? Because obviously they work together. Why am I going to work for someone who I know used to be a crime lord? Like, it just didn't make any sense. It wasn't just. So a lot of them were quitting. So the commissioner was like, I'm also going to step down because I don't believe in this. So Fisk threatens him with his family. The way that Fisk brings the commissioner in, who is from Philadelphia, okay, and he's eating a Philly cheesesteak, says the whole thing. Philly cheesesteaks, you know what's a really good Philly cheesesteak? This one diner uptown in I don't know where that kind of does it well. He slips the folder up to reveal the commissioner's wife and kid. And then Fisk is like, well, if you step down, we're going to have a little issue because I know where your favorite diner is for Philly cheesesteaks and where your kid is and where your wife is. Commissioner doesn't step down because of that. And I was like, that's so subtle, so effective. Loved every second of that one. I was obsessed. Cut to Dr. Glenn in her office, which is Heather, Matt's girlfriend. Vanessa and Wilson Fisk enter for couples therapy. So she's also tied to them. This is a big deal. She's now tied to them. Obviously, as a therapist, you can't go disclosing who your patients are. So she doesn't tell Matt. Matt has no idea that they know each other. And that is such a good way to do that because they're keeping secrets from one another, Matt and Heather. Even though they're in love with each other and all of that, they're staying with each other. They can't tell each other secrets. And that's what's so interesting about their dynamic, juxtaposing, you know, Karen and Matt's relationship as well prior. Obviously, we know their relationship, but they did know more about each other. And Karen sure as hell knew that he was Daredevil. So it's very interesting there. So because of Matt's hearing, he heard the cops. He heard the cops say that there was Nikki Torres on the platform as well, that they had to go talk to this guy, Nikki Torres, and there was a witness. There was a witness there. So he's like, okay, let me go see Nikki Torres. Talks to him about like being a witness on the stand and all of that. And then the cops end up going to the apartment of Nikki Torres and they end up seeing Matt. Matt's holding all this anger in, but Matt's just Matt. Dude is not dressed as Daredevil. I've never seen such brutal fight choreography for Matt Murdock, just as Matt Murdock. It's not even as Daredevil. And I think that's what's so crazy about it is that he's no longer waiting to put the mask on. So then you start looking and Kingpin's not far off either. If I'm not putting the mask on and I have this rage and I have this violent nature about me, who am I hiding from? Which part of myself am I hiding from? So that's really important for them to reflect on because it doesn't make sense for Matt to beat them to a pulp the way that he did. But there's just so much grief and pain that he's not dealing with. He just keeps repressing it that he lets out a scream at the end of this episode as well. So episodes 1 and 2, it's a lot to unpack. I have my notes. That's why I've been trying to go in order of events here. It's just fascinating character work for Matt Murdock and Daredevil because Kingpin's not so far off with the whole mask on, mask off. Who are you as a person? What is your persona? Is the persona that you put on with the mask who you're hiding from in reality? Or is it vice versa? So I love the first 2 episodes. I think that this season is going to be fantastic. I need the next season immediately. I'm so happy they're filming it back to back. There's a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of groundwork. There's a lot of like underground crime stuff that we're going to see here. And it's great because you can drop tidbits of the New Yorkers and there's little breadcrumbs here and there. Okay, so I kind of blew up with the Miles Morales situation. That's fine. I know it's not Miles, but he could be around. I hope he's around. We have something so ground level here that has the longevity because he can bring in so many, C characters like White Tiger. You can bring in like different villains as well, which we'll see here in this season that would work at this level for Daredevil because Daredevil can kind of mix in with Spider-Man and, he can kind of mix in with so many other characters like She-Hulk as well, where it does feel like Monster of the Week type vibe, but it's not giving that. Like, I think it's structured extremely well. I love that they're like in like an hour in length, 45-minute episodes like that, but they go by so fast. The pacing is fantastic in each episode. I really enjoyed what I saw in these first 2 episodes. I I couldn't be happier to continue watching Daredevil, and I'm just overjoyed that we have something like this that is just so dark in the MCU, and it just fits. It suits it so well. There's some levity. It's just amazing because people have gone back and forth with the whole mask on, mask off, and the writers are doing an incredible job teetering on that line of, who they are as a person. And we really get to know these characters, Fisk and Matt Murdock, extremely well. There's such a great balance between the two of them, and it doesn't feel like one's overpowering the other. I will most likely be covering it weekly because I love this, and I was very fortunate to watch the season, and guys are in for a real treat. It's really good. Don't expect too many reveals or pop-ups or anything like that. It is just so perfectly grounded for a Daredevil series, and I'm obsessed. So if you guys enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed Daredevil Born Again episodes 1 and 2. I will be covering it weekly, as I said, so hit that subscribe button and come join me. You guys can always follow me over at AMX NDA Reviews on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd. You can check out my Instagram down below, and there are ways if you want to help the channel, you can check that out down below. I'll catch you guys next time. Keep watching movies.